Welcome to the Everyman Commentary Podcast. I'm your host, Auguste Meyraw, the founding editor of the Everyman, and I'm joined again today by my cohort co-host, Evan McClanahan, senior contributor of the Everyman, and host of his own podcast, Theology on Air. Today, I wanted to dig into the recent essay by the popular right-wing writer John Carter, entitled simply Poastocracy. As with most of Carter's essays, this one was not just a banger, but a barn burner. He explains a phenomenon that we're all starting to notice, namely that online right-wing influencers and bloggers, otherwise known as posters, with an A, are influencing a number of policy position changes in our country's leadership. A provocative meme could be shared among a few anonymous personalities, like John Carter, or like us, and this will ignite a discussion that makes its way to the federal government. Moreover, the conversation will often ripple out into the public consciousness, turning a once undiscussed issue into a pressing concern. Carter's examples of this phenomenon include the Community Relief Services, CRS, a secret government department that has basically been silencing the families of victims of black violence, as well as Trump's reform of the HB1 visas. What started as a spat between posters became a priority for this administration. While these are ultimately good things and a great deal of fun for the participants in these discussions, Carter does mention a few problems, which mainly revolve around AstroTurf campaigns where bots or click farms are utilized to give the veneer of popularity to certain issues. There's also the problem of posters themselves, giving undue attention to certain issues that don't resonate with most Americans. So far, Trump and Vance seem to be pretty good at distinguishing between the niche concerns and the more general ones that they could do something about. That's not a given, though. And again, they won't be president. Well, Trump won't be president forever. And hopefully Vance wins and he can kind of carry on the wisdom here. Anyway, that's my very brief summary of the 8,500-word essay, which I heartily recommend you read and I will include in the show notes. Now I want to bring Evan in to get his thoughts. So, Evan, I think I'll start with the simplest question first. Do you agree with Carter's assessment that we're living in a postocracy? Or do you think he's making a mountain of a molehill and that the online world is still not the real world by a long shot?
I think he makes some pretty compelling arguments. Some of what, I'm a little older than some of those in the postocracy world, some of the posters out there. But no, I think he makes. I think what we're really talking about is I think the word is disambiguation. I hope that's the right word, but the
Yeah,
decentralization.
explain.
Well, yeah, basically that, this is what Trump really did masterfully, and this is how he won in 2016. He used Twitter to full advantage. He went over the heads. They used to say this about Reagan. He went over the heads of the media. He went directly to the American people, but he still had to use media apparatus to do that, traditional media apparatus. So Trump using Twitter, which was a pretty new platform still at the time, he disambiguated. He created this, relationship with people all on his own. He forced media to report on what he was saying on Twitter, and I think that's pretty well documented and pretty well known. And so this is really kind of that next step where new media tools are still being discovered, still being utilized in new ways, and they're hitting critical mass. I saw a headline, didn't read the article, but the headline just today was that YouTube, I might try to find it. I think it was on Citizen Free Press, but YouTube is like slaughtering television ratings. So, you look at, I don't think it's just live streams. I just think it's how many eyeballs are on YouTube videos, and it's far surpassing, traditional television.
I'm still waiting to get those numbers for our show or our channel
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, apparently there's a lot of competition out there.
Yeah, I guess.
So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack. Operation Mockingbird, the true story of CIA having invested roles, or a vested interest in all of our media. You have people that become journalists that ended up going to CIA school for a while, but they got kicked out or they didn't pass. But kind of maybe they really are agents, but in other ways. Decades of really not getting true news is now obviously something the internet is offering the opportunity. And yeah, and on the right, the joke is the left can't meme. Why is the right so good at memeing? Why has this kind of dank, sarcastic, witty, dark kind of medium found such a home on the right? And uh, I think there's a lot of reasons for that, which I might be able to unpack. But in general, yeah, it does seem like it is possible to for someone out there, look at like Data Republican. I'm
Yeah,
not sure if
yeah,
you know, she is
yeah. I know her.
yeah, yeah. So but for the audience, I mean, she's I believe legally blind. She's sort of confined. She's able to work, but she just does incredible research. Charlie Kirk found her, retweeted her, platformed her. As did others, and this was when all the Doge stuff was going around. She was like unpacking whole government agencies and where the following the money trail and all this. So that's a sort of person where traditional nodes are disambiguated, right? Traditional ways of doing, investigative research or investigative journalism, they're just breaking apart. Ordinary people with incredible skill didn't go to journalism school and now they have an outlet and it's working. So I think there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. Uh, and we might just be on the front line of that battle.
Well, okay. So I'm with you. I mean, I'm more on the fence than you'd think. Like on one hand, yes, I'm getting a lot of inspiration, a lot of information from Substacks. So I read a
Hmm.
lot of Substacks. I read a lot of what would be considered alternative media. I write for alternative media. So yeah, I'm reading The Federalist, Chronicles, I'm reading a bunch of Substacks. I'm reading Real Clear, and Real Clear, offers a lot of articles on the kind of alternative sites. So it's not the
Hmm.
Atlantic, it's not the New York Times, but I'll tune in into even some of those bigger publications, right? But I guess what keeps me from getting more excited about this, like, wow, anybody can have a voice if you're just compelling enough and you hustle and you network and you platform each other, and that's what the Everyman's about. So, I mean, it's a mission I believe in and what I feel like I've been practicing. While I want to get excited about this, I'm cautious because it could so easily be throttled, right? And that's what kind of makes me nervous because America's unique in this regard, right? America has a very free media environment. There are so many options. And now the alternative has become like not really an alternative. It's like the main choice going to YouTube, listening to these types of voices that have made themselves big or going to X or going to Substack. Um, is now they don't have this in other countries, right? And so that's why it's always interesting to kind of look in on the UK or France or Germany. You look at these Western European countries, and they don't have a very diverse media environment. They still have the three channels that the government, uses to kind of push their agenda,
Hmm.
and so a lot of people, and that's why their elections make no sense to Americans. Like, well, if you knew what we knew, you would never vote for Macron again. You would never vote for the Labor Party. You would never vote for these weird environmentalist Marxists over in Germany. And so I think, what these other countries do and have done was what we used to do, right? So the throttling part is what makes me nervous. All it takes is one administration, like the Biden administration, to say, well, hello. It wasn't. Who was it before Musk? It was that other guy with the long, nasty beard. Um,
Oh,
who
Jack
owns
Dorsey.
Twitter? What? Jack?
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey. Thank you. So yeah, all it takes is like some stooge in the Biden administration. Go to Jack Dorsey. Go to Mark Zuckerberg. Go to these guys. Say, hey, nice platform you got there. It'd be a shame if you got
Right.
sued or you got caught on something. And they pressure these groups. And this is, I wasn't going to go into Amy Coney Barrett, but on this thing, this was her biggest mistake is that she ruled against, I think it was Louisiana. It was a few states that challenged like the whole, she was trying to say, oh, the government was not coercing or pressuring these platforms to do it. Like, of course they were. Of course they were. Um, and so, Trump was kicked off of Twitter. A lot of voices were kicked off. I mean, a relatively recent thing, actually,
Yeah.
extremely recent thing. Uh, Basically, after Trump was reelected, that we have this like, fruitful, diverse cornucopia of voices. And I guess I'm still scarred by just how easily you could censor stuff, how easily you can really eliminate the reach of some of these voices. Um, and I mean, there are openings, there are opportunities to kind of really mess with the system. I think you have platforms like X, which, they run on algorithms. They pay people for the amount of engagement that their posts get. And this kind of distorts a lot of the conversation. Some voices get amplified, some voices don't. As a writer, I know I get pretty annoyed that I can't share my essays on X, or else I have to do this weird thing where you take a picture of it and then you put it on the post so that it doesn't get like blackballed by the algorithm.
Why
Because
can't
the
you
whole goal
share
is to
your what? Why can't you do that?
Because if you do that, if you include a link to your article on an X post, then like the algorithm's not is gonna like kind of downvote it or kind of
Okay.
bury it
I didn't
underneath
know
other
that.
stuff because they want to keep you on X. They want to keep you on
Oh, okay.
Facebook. So the idea is like that you don't want to include links that would take you away from,
Oh,
the slot
okay.
machine.
Yeah, yeah.
So Substack, I don't know if it works. I think Substack's a little bit more writer friendly. I mean, this is a thing. If you ever talk to like freelancers or people that write columns and stuff, they get pretty annoyed with, a lot of these social media things because it's like it used to be like this is how Daily Wire got big, right? It was on Facebook and it was able to kind of market through there through social media. And back in the good old days, like, yeah, you could post a link to your website, Daily Wire or whatever, and people would see it and they would go. And so it was basically very, very cheap advertisement for a site.
Hmm.
And now it's like, unless you're paying Elon, like, or, whoever owns Twitter, yeah, your stuff doesn't get, as much reach as you'd want it to get, Whereas if you just post a meme and keep people on
Yeah,
X, X will pay
yeah,
you. You're like, good, you're getting engagement. So anyway,
yeah.
all this is to say, I agree. I mean, are we getting a postocracy? I think we are. But I think it's important to kind of stand back and recognize just how unique and beautiful that is, right? When you
Well,
have,
let me ask you
okay,
this. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You're actually getting to your main point. It is unique and beautiful that kind of people from out of nowhere can come from relative obscurity and actually reach someone like the vice president. That was kind of where we're going with this, right? That there are people who can pull obscure data or point out some factoid from somewhere or do really interesting research, and it kind of can climb up the social media escalator until it gets to say a Matt Walsh, who then can put a blowtorch on it, and and these people have the ears of powerful people. I mean,
yeah.
just okay. I sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off before that.
Well, I mean, okay, well, that's
Yeah,
one aspect of it. And yet again,
let
I remember
yeah,
Charlie Kirk. He was excellent at
yeah,
platforming these kind of obscure voices,
yeah,
and he kept his feelers out. And so, just another great thing about Charlie Kirk, and it's a really sad thing he's
yeah,
gone now. But um,
yeah.
because he wasn't, because here's the thing: you have two approaches to this. You could either look at other people as your competition, and you don't try to give them any tips. You don't try to connect with them. I mean, I'm not like that, but I've met people that are that way, and they're
Sure.
trying to play the game and be influencers or kind of bigger names. Um, and then you have people like Charlie Kirk, like myself, like a lot of people that are just like they do want to network, they want to trade ideas, and they want to help each other and kind of create new publications and new kind of communities, really.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the other aspect to appreciate about this, there's cultural changes happening. So, I mean, American culture, as far as I mean, we see this in the news about transgenderism kind of becoming passe. Kids aren't identifying as non-binary or transgender anymore, or fewer of them are. Which I always kind of
Mhm.
figured, yeah, transgenderism seems like a phase, a fad. But
Social
again,
contagion,
but again,
self-defeating.
it goes away a lot faster when voices are allowed to be heard and you have a true forum versus something that's kind of manicured and customized according to the whims of the powerful. And so American culture itself is becoming more and more different than I think these other countries in terms of their attitudes. I mean, which we identify as conservative or traditional. Whereas other countries don't seem to get the memo. They're still going on about green energy and like environmentalism, which to me is like, man, that's so 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I
I
think that's the
mean,
thing I appreciate about the
Miami is not
postocracy.
underwater.
Huh?
Yeah, so I was just saying Miami is not underwater yet.
Not yet.
Let me ask you this though, because
Okay.
I it dawned on me at some point listening to if you want to consider like say Rush Limbaugh the beginning in many respects of kind of an alternative media
Yeah.
ecosystem. Okay, and one of the things that he would do is he would use like leftist media as his, jumping off point, his piñata basically, right? So he would play clips from, CNN or MSNBC, or he would read articles from the New York Times and he kind of riff on it. There was that was a stack of stuff, right? And and at the same time, it started to become obvious that like, well, 20 million people listen to Rush Limbaugh every week, and only half a million or a couple of million people were watching CNN, and that was 20 years ago. Now we know that, someone like I don't know, Don Lemon, when he was on CNN, was getting a couple 100,000 people watching, and like Matt Walsh would get 1 million people to download his show plus watch his clips on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. And
Yeah.
so I'm going, why? And yet, someone like, I'm not criticizing Matt Walsh. Again, it's good foil material, but why do we care what they have to say if we're like so outnumbering them? And so that tells me that the traditional media still does have a lot to say, even if not many people watch. There still is some note of power there that we want to dismiss, but for some reason we can't, and I don't know why. I don't know enough about media or politics or the way things really work to understand why. I mean, look at say Jimmy Kimmel. All right, so Jimmy Kimmel, we had the whole brouhaha with the Charlie Kirk thing, and it's kind of like an open secret that they're probably going to cancel him anyway because we're finding out that these shows cost $100 million to produce, and even though it's billed as comedy, we all know it's not if you've listened to them for 5 seconds. So it's essentially like $100 million propaganda campaign, and like very few people watch. So why are we like why are we so bothered by it? Like why do we care what Jimmy Kimmel has to say? Because hardly anybody is watching. Why do we take their clips and mock them? I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm trying to figure out is if
Hmm.
CNN has 1 million people watching, which is really like one out of every 300 Americans, right? That's like
Yeah.
nothing. I mean, it's a lot, but I mean, like all in all, it's not very much. Why are we so worried about them? And do they still have a lot of power?
Well, okay, this is a good question, and there are a few ways to go with it. So I've heard the argument that conservatives, yeah, they're always reacting, right? So, Don Lemon, no one goes to his show or his little podcast or whatever he has now. But people will comment and they can create a whole segment on their podcast about it, and it's a lot more fun to watch, right?
Hmm.
And listen to. But a big kind of thing that's missing from conservative media is like we don't have journalists. I mean, very few, right? Like actual journalistic work is still carried on by legacy media press. So from New York Times and these places that can afford to pay journalists to go into an area or to research an issue and to put it together and have editors and all that. So it requires a little bit more capital and infrastructure to kind of create a a news media organization that can produce
Yeah.
news.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
conservatives are kind of at the mercy of these leftist outlets that nonetheless have original reporting, and then they can riff off of it and comment on it. I mean, and it's actually funny. I had a student ask me, like, she's wanted to get into journalism. She's like, "Can I interview you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not a journalist." She's like, "Well, you write stuff for places." Like, "Yeah, I write stuff. I'm an essayist. I'm a columnist. I'm a freelancer. I'm not a journalist."
Yeah.
And I mean, in the few occasions that I have done journalism, like where I've actually had to interview a person or, kind of like take down notes on a certain event, it's alien to me. I mean, and honestly, I don't find it as interesting as just kind of like sitting on my chair and kind of, thinking about what's going on and
Right.
putting
Sure.
together arguments. So there's the journalism aspect, like original reporting, I think is still quite new to conservative media. I mean, it's the same thing for even artistic or entertainment products, right? I mean, that's kind of like always been the thing with these commentators, like, oh, we don't produce culture, we just react to leftist stuff. The leftists
Yeah.
create movies and da 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 da. Um, and I think, I think the easy answer to this is like it takes time. It takes time to build out a certain, various studios and production
Yeah,
kind of organizations.
but in many ways, these posters are Poasters. They're
Yeah,
acting as journalists in many ways because, they may not be a physical person who's going to like a press conference, taking notes and writing a review of what happened, but they're researching online. And look at someone like Natalie Winters, who was like a 19 years old, University of Chicago student, and she got connected with through Raheem Kassam to Steve Bannon. She now works,
yeah,
for the War Room, and she's this really pretty, conservative. But she like did yeoman's work in terms of like, finding connections to, I don't know, the CCP and the Wuhan lab, and people, scientists in America who are funding gain of function research. Just all these kinds of like, kind of obscure connections. I mean, I would call that journalism. And so maybe that's a bright spot is that we are kind of getting some journalism from free from these people who are willing to do it, and that information is matriculating up. Um,
well, yeah,
but
but that brings me to the other point about this, right?
yeah,
So you're asking, okay, we could have original journalism. We do have a few people that are, doing the reporting or gathering the stuff to make reports. But here's the other problem is that, media is not democratic. Okay. Only very recently are we starting to see something that resembles a kind of democracy where everyone has a voice and the majority opinion rules the day, right? But for the longest time, and I think in many aspects of American culture or whatever, it's been elitist. Okay. I mean, media has been kind of an elitist thing. So you're like, well, who watches CNN? Well, important people watch CNN, Evan. Okay. Who reads the New York Times? Well, smart people read the New York Times. And that's the problem. It's like, okay, you can have a Rush Limbaugh or you have a Charlie Kirk. They have huge followings. Well, who's their audience? Well, are any of them powerful? Only with the new Trump administration, and that's why we're starting to have a
yeah.
postocracy. Only with J.D. Vance, with
Or
Donald Trump.
or or let me throw this out.
Okay,
Charlie Kirk would talk about how at his own rallies, where they were like registered people to vote, they would run across not like the occasional, but like there would be, multiple people, maybe 10% of the people there, they weren't even registered to vote, right? So that's like why he had this idea of like at
yeah,
Trump rallies,
they're not
like
even
not even
voters.
his, they're not even voters. Like they like 10% of the people at a Trump rally like weren't even voters. So he was like, well, we should do a voter drive, like we should get people registered to vote. So maybe it is that those who watch media or read the New York Times, they have an outsized participation rate, or they're in outsized influential positions. Maybe they teach at a college, right? So if your
Yeah.
average English professor watches MSNBC on a regular basis, is informed in that milieu, then he shares that to his, I don't know, 80 students that he teaches. So maybe that's kind of why.
But we've all been conditioned with this too, Evan. If somebody came
Yeah,
up to you and said, "Hey, I saw this really great documentary by Dinesh D'Souza about, these voting mules you know, and you're just a normal person, you're like, ew, Dinesh D'Souza, okay, conspiracy stuff, or like,
yeah,
oh my gosh,
right,
did you hear what,
right.
Natalie Winters said about the China Biden connection? Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, we know better. It's like, well, sure, these people produce good work and they actually take notes and they show their work and all that. But, from an early age, you're learning to say, well, okay, that's not authoritative. There are a lot of grifters in that world, and there are, okay, and scammers and just kind of crackpots. Um, and so that's the problem is that, you're taught at an early age. I
yeah,
mean, I think younger generations don't get as much as that. So if you approach maybe a younger person, like a Zoomer, and said, "Hey, there's this documentary about how the election was rigged by Dinesh D'Souza, and he kind of shows how it works," they'd probably be more open to it. They wouldn't have that much of a frame of reference, but they'd probably be more open to it. Or if Matt Wall says, "Okay, here's how you crush your liberal friend," and about the environment.
yeah,
But I think millennials on up, I mean, the older you get, the more resistance you're going to meet when you're trying to introduce like new kinds of media or new voices or new sources
Right.
of information.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing, right?
So, do we agree that Elon Musk really probably did save free speech?
Yeah,
I mean, when I will say this, when Charlie Kirk, it's funny, like I'm not talking about him because he's dead. I mean, it's just like he comes up in so many
he
conversations
does.
because,
He does.
like, but like when he said that Elon Musk was worth like three Senate seats, I thought he was crazy. When he said that Elon Musk buying, Twitter was like as important as a presidential election, I thought he was insane. And now I'm like, I don't know. I mean, because it's not just that X is a platform. It forced he the Twitter files as a process forced
Yeah.
every social media company to now I'm not saying they don't still throttle and blackball and they could start again tomorrow if someone else wins if a AOC becomes president in 2029, but like basically they can't throttle anymore. So like, again, Charlie Kirk used TikTok, Donald Trump used TikTok. Do you remember when there was like a meter of like Kamala Harris on TikTok who, had a huge head start, I believe. And then Trump got on TikTok kind of famously and like you could see, he was like surpassing her in followers. So, whereas that wouldn't have happened. I mean, this was a guy literally kicked off of social media, debanked. Couldn't, I think he was kicked off of Etsy or something, or eBay. Like the guy was like deplatformed everywhere. And so to then 4 years later, like literally be surpassing the Democrat nominee on TikTok of all platforms is pretty remarkable. So yeah, I really didn't see that coming. And so X is I mean, I have friends of mine in group chats that send like Instagram videos. I don't have Instagram.
Yeah.
Am I doing it wrong? I mean, I don't want Instagram. I don't want Meta. I've left Facebook for all intents and purposes, because of the throttling that you mentioned earlier, actually, which is now
You
why I
know,
understand why no
Facebook's
one
just
at
for
seems.
old people, Evan.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty old. I'm pretty old. But
Well,
yeah, like, but now I understand, like, because I used to use Facebook to post links, and to talk about things, and now I understand that you're telling me the algorithm is working against me.
well, people are creating content on Facebook or not Facebook, X,
Yeah,
Twitter. Whereas I think in the past, Twitter was like, okay, it was a platform through which you could share your writing, you could
yeah,
share bigger things, but like it was pretty strict about the number of characters you could
right,
use,
right.
and you couldn't use all this multimedia stuff. But now you're having a growing number of influencers, for lack of a better word. I mean, they do a little bit of writing through their posts, and then they do some memes and they make comics. Sometimes they make videos or they make reaction videos. So, I mean, that's, Elon Musk's big dream was to kind of create a platform that does everything, I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
include elements of TikTok, Instagram, but also elements of Facebook, also elements of, all these other places.
Well,
And,
AI, so there's,
and well, and
yeah,
and now it's, yeah, if there's any real threat to X at this point, um, I mean, I think it's gotten to be too big and too used for a government. I mean, and there's been so many objections and I think court cases that I don't think you're going to have President AOC or whomever. I think it would be very hard for them to kind of close that Pandora's box or whatever, close
yeah,
that or put the cap back on the toothpaste, right? I
yeah,
think it's out there, it's popular, people are adapting. Even the left has to adapt to this platform, if they want to grow their audiences and all that. And and even newspapers. It's funny. It used to be you would post links to articles on X now or on Twitter, and then on X, it's like no when you read articles now, it's always like the references and hyperlinks are all like to X posts.
yeah.
So that's where the original reporting's happening. That's where like the primary sources are. Um, and so, I mean, so it's kind of been flipped. So, but now you have a lot of content creators on Twitter, on X. Um, I mean, I don't know how comfortable I personally feel. I like writing, and again, I think there's a place for that. I think Substack does fine. I'm not going to be a booster. They haven't paid me yet. But I know like other writers that I like, they'll always have like, oh, let me tell you how awesome Substack is. Like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Let
yeah,
me I want to there's another aspect, and as you're talking, I'm looking for it. I don't know if I can find it or not. But um so anyway, one of the aspects about the Postocracy article is that it's pretty apparent that some of these posters have found their way into government jobs. Okay.
yeah,
And they're not being slapped on the wrist when they kind of make risque posts. So, um, so for example, like the Department of Homeland Security is pretty awesome. Like it's a great Twitter follower. Like you should totally, or X, you should totally follow it. And here it is. So this is a post, and in many ways, it's extremely modest, but it's actually quite radical if you understand what's being said. So this is a post from August 11th of this year, so about 2 months ago. It's by Homeland Security. This is back when the debate around using National Guard in Washington, D.C. was taking place. It is a
okay.
picture of the Capitol building. It's called View from Hotel Continental in Washington, D.C. You see the Capitol building, you see lovely green grounds, you see these antique cars lining the streets. It's a postcard. It's actually a
Mhm.
postcard from 1943.
Okay.
And it's basically like our beautiful capital, and it's the pride of America. And it simply says, we can return. And to me, it says so much in one post, because what it's actually saying is things were better before. That we can go back there if there's a will, if we desire it. That what we actually value is cleanliness, is order, well manicured lawns, the flags flying on top of the building, beautiful architecture, green spaces for the public to enjoy. It's a critique then of what we are, because we're not that now. What are we now? Well, obviously we're homeless people defecating, on the sidewalk. We don't care for things. I mean, Trump the other day, like at a press conference, was going on about grass. Okay, like we're going to replace the sod in Washington, D.C. I know a lot about sod. I own golf courses. Grass is really
I would
important.
recommend Zoysia. St. Augustine is annoying, and it's gosh. Okay.
I've put down so much St. Augustine through the years, I can't even tell you. In my oak trees, I think devoured. But anyway,
Okay.
but there's an aesthetic. There's something about a conservative aesthetic that is wonderful and lovely. And so, like to me, that's just like that never would have been allowed in probably the first Trump administration, certainly the Bush administration, because what it is, it's a critique of the way that things are. It's a critique of liberalism. It's a critique of modernism in its own way. It's basically saying there's an ideal that we used to understand as a nation, and we're going back to it. That's what it says when we can return. And so that is our government saying that. That's not a poster saying that on the far reaches. It's our government saying that as an open critique of what we have become. But that is clearly someone in that posting world who has risen to the rank, who gets it, right? They understand the moment we're in. They understand where the conflict really lies, you might say, at this moment. So just that's just one like small example. It's not even like dark. It's not even dank. It's not even ironic. It's just
Yeah.
we used to be a great country, and we're saying that we're not. Instead of the bullcrap we've said to ourselves forever and ever and ever, we're the greatest country on earth. We're the greatest country on earth. We're the greatest country on earth. Like everything we do must be great because we're the greatest country on earth. And I believed that when I was a kid, and that's all I've ever been told. Finally, we're saying we're not the greatest. And
Well,
ironically, that's literally the words of MAGA, but it never, like, I guess I never believed anyone meant it?
well, what's interesting is that we are the greatest country on the earth, but for a different reason now.
Yeah.
Now we're the freest country. Again, I'm always appalled at just the taste, the culture of other places. You ever think about like popular entertainment in other countries? And maybe I'm going to sound a little bit chauvinistic here, but it's just like if you try to watch comedies or dramas or just any kind of movie from other countries, for the longest time anyway. It's just like, ugh, how do these things have audiences? How do people get into cricket? Or how do they get into, this type of show or whatever? And, to me, it was
Like
evidence like,
telenovelas or what? I mean, give me some
well, yeah,
examples
you
here.
could have telenovelas like, or just like these goofy comedies in France or Germany. And, what qualifies as their kind of like prestige television by American standards, it's pretty low production and pretty lame.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just it lacks sophistication, it lacks, kind of polish. And so, as an American who consumes just American entertainment and arts and letters, uh, there's just so much more here. Okay, and I've been spoiled, and you tend to miss it when you try to start to plunge into different cultures. I mean, again, that's changing. I think Korea and some other countries are starting to produce some good products that, transcend just cultural ties and nostalgia.
Hmm.
But no, what I'm saying is that America is still great now because of the postocracy.
Mm.
Okay, so I think Carter is right about this is that now we have the voices. Now we have the different perspectives. Now it's like a huge rainbow, not a gay one, but like just a
Hmm.
huge diversity of voices, and it's colorful and it's great. And well, what I think is, what's different now is that not only are these posters making it into places of authority and power, but it's starting to like change policy. So I kind of wanted to bring up the examples Carter uses. That's not, I think is a pseudonym, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
just
guessing
gonna
now.
kind of treat him like
Yeah.
that's his name, John Carter.
It's too bad
Um,
that Disney movie was a flop because I
I
think
know. I just like
that
thinking that.
story
Wait,
has
is
a
that
big
the movie
following.
about the guy, the
Yeah.
caveman on Mars or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
But the book is good from what people say. I don't know.
I'd imagine. Okay,
Yeah.
so anyway, but he uses the example. I mean, and I know this is kind of a touchy subject, so we may want to watch what we say. But the whole thing about, did you know much about the community relations service
I
where,
never heard of that. Yeah.
so I kind of picked up on it very recently and just kind of, but Carter goes more into it, just how you would have these instances of just, a white person gets killed by a black person and, or a young person usually, and then like the parents would make a statement or have a press conference and they would immediately say, look, I forgive it, forgive the person, or they might not forgive them, but just say, look, I don't want to make this about race. We're just trying to process our grief. Da 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 da. I mean, like a clear-cut instance of that would be like over here in DFW with the Carmelo Anthony
All right.
stabbing Austin Metcalf, and the dad gave a press conference almost the next day or the day after that and just immediately forgave Carmelo and just kind of explained away the issue and tried not to make it about race. And shortly after that, he was accused of being racist and terrible and all that. Um, but no, the CRS would always go to these people. I mean, and it was hard to prove it because it was all secret. But there
Yeah.
was this department, there was this organization that always seemed to kind of be conferring with these families, these grieving families, saying, look, please don't bring up race. Please don't bring up the fact that, there might have been an altercation based on, differences of race or whatever. Um, you know,
It
we,
seemed kind of sus.
and yeah, and they would intimidate the person. And so all these crimes, if they were reported at all, would just kind of be explained away, or the race would be just kind of like circumscribed or whatever. And so I thought that was interesting, and now it's not. Now it's no more. And I think a lot of these crimes now are going to be reported honestly, and parents will be allowed to say, "Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
problem uh, with the black community, or at least with this individual, that does have something to do with race." And we can't just say it's systemic injustice,
Yeah.
because again, if you're allowed to say that, then I think you're allowed to kind of make some constructive remedies.
Yeah.
So instead of just trying to,
But the point is that this is a totally obscure agency that no one knew
yeah,
about. until someone sort of unearthed it and said, "Hey, what is this? No one ever talks about it. You can't find anything, but it's got a line item here in the budget. Gets, I don't know, 24 million a year. It wasn't a
Yeah,
lot, but you can do a lot with 24 million.
sure.
Think of a really successful nonprofit that on $1 million budget does a banger of a job for some particular cause. Maybe for 30 million bucks a year, you could fly around the country and pressure people and I don't know, whatever it is
Well,
they
I
were
mean, that was
doing.
the whole thing with
Yeah.
the NGOs for the what is it called? USAID.
Yeah, USAID, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean that seems to be what they were doing.
well, and so, but the whole story behind it and why Carter uses it as an example is that, no one really knew about it. And
Yeah.
then I think you had Raw Egg Nationalist, who I do follow, and then another
Hmm.
person, and they were talking about it. And I think Orrin McIntyre got in on it. And then you have kind of a Persian name, Parvini, who wrote a
Hmm.
book or kind of a pamphlet on it. And so finally it became a story and like someone picked up on it. Again, it's hard to prove like, oh yes,
Right.
I am, shutting this down because Raw Egg National is mentioned.
Right.
Like, no, but it was in the water. Like things get in
Right.
the water now
Right.
that used to kind of just stay under the radar.
Yeah.
The same thing with the HB1 visa. Now that one was a lot more, that was a bigger scuffle.
Yeah, because Elon
Um,
Musk got in on it, Vivek, other people,
Yeah,
Vivek.
so I mean, the whole thing there was that everybody kind of knew about it, but it was never officially recognized that, well, golly shucks, a lot of these big tech companies, but also other employers, like I would just say white collar employers would basically just get a whole bunch of HB1 visas and just hire people from South Asia.
Yeah.
And it wasn't paying them slave wages. It was just like, well, we're going to pay them 20, 30% less than maybe a typical employee.
Yeah.
And, that would still save them a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
And then what in turn happened was that, these HB1 applicants would soon be just become permanent residents.
Yeah.
They would even get promoted and then they'd hire other H1Bs themselves. And so a whole company the whole composition and demographic of Google, say, would become very South Asian.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just funny, like, so this became a complaint. Um, Vivek, gosh, okay. And I got in on this too. This was Christmas break. I had nothing to do. So,
Yeah.
you're just kind of reading this. And Vivek Ramaswamy just said, well, yeah, no.
Americans are
Americans,
lazy. Yeah.
yeah, they watch Saved by the Bell and they don't want to work. And yeah, these Indian students. But, that point, it is interesting because, okay, I teach in an area that has a pretty big Indian population, and I love my Indian students. And Vivek is right to say, like, academics is a
Yeah.
very high
He
priority.
he he wasn't totally wrong.
He wasn't totally wrong,
Yeah.
but what's interesting is that the Indian Americans, okay, not HB1 visa applicants that just come fresh from India, but their children, okay, I feel
Mhm.
like I probably teach that to the children of maybe these HB1 workers. Um, they are different.
Well,
Okay.
they're like the top 10 spelling bee,
Yeah,
content.
they work very hard.
There's
They
something in that
are
culture.
strong students.
Yeah.
You know
Same
what?
with,
They're actually kind of conservative. Like they
yeah.
follow Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh and a
Yeah.
lot of these influencers and they kind of read about it and um versus like I think Indians who come, who are more recent to the country, who kind of like maintain kind of they still think Democrats, the Democrat Party is like the
Yeah.
party of
Yeah.
elites and winners, and so they kind
Yeah.
of I'm assuming that's kind of the rationale. It's like because otherwise they really don't game through any Democrat policy.
Or it's the party
Anyway,
of the downtrodden and they come from a lower
well,
caste and I don't
maybe,
know.
I mean, that's the thing, and I
Yeah.
think it kind of goes to this these elites, if you have the elite image is attractive, right? And
Yeah.
Democrats now have the elite image. I mean, Trump can never have that because he's relying on posters. You
I mean,
know,
it's ironic though,
it is
given
ironic though.
given
Yeah.
the guy's a gold toilet. It seems pretty elite to me. So,
Well, exactly. And so it's like I think the big effort of the postocracy now is to normalize it.
yeah.
And to me, maybe we're not quite there yet. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Let me say one concern I have, and
Okay.
this was illustrated with the beef this week between Matt Walsh and Brandon Dilly, uh, which I didn't, Dilly memes. So I don't know if that's his real name, but he's a he's high up in Trump world. I mean, at least in that orb. I'm not saying he's employed by them or in the administration, but like his memes are. I mean, they're definitely viral, and I've enjoyed a lot of them.
Hmm.
But something came up. I don't even remember what it was about, and he just went after Matt Walsh with a gusto, and I'm like, dude, this is our guy. I mean, especially in the wake of
Well, was
Charlie
this
Kirk
over
stuff. He's
the stupid group chat about
yes, I believe so.
young
I believe
Republicans
so.
and all that?
Yeah. Although I think they would be on the same side of that because Dilly is about as dank as it gets, so
Okay.
Dilly's not going to care about what some young
Well,
Republicans
so
say
what
in a
was the
group chat.
criticism he was making? I guess I haven't followed this.
He basically, I think Matt Walsh said something like, if you pardon my French, okay, but Matt Walsh said something like, if we don't kind of circle the wagons and defend these Republican kids, that's a bitch move. And then Dilly came out and said, like, well, you're the queen of the bitches. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't understand that. I don't know what the beef is. I think for some people, Matt Walsh is not hard enough. So this is my concern with the poster culture
Sure.
that conservatism and Christianity, they're the same thing. Okay. They're really in America, there is no conservatism without Christianity. And again, to reference him again, Charlie Kirk understood this, that there was a symbiosis between his worldview, his political worldview, and his Christian worldview. And there is a and I think good things are happening in that world. I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that you really can't have, coherent politics without coherent morals and a whole legal and justice framework, for all of this. And the left has abandoned God, and we see where that gets them. So, my concern is that the poster, the dank, ironic, community could be as godless as the left in their own way, and they could be, like it's kind of like the Curtis Yarvins of the world, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, like he's probably right about some stuff, and like I'm glad if his little faction is like in our broad coalition, but like there's a cynicism there that I don't love. Um, and so there's kind of some dark edges in like the conservative movement, and the people that I really admire and respect ultimately are the Christians who understand how to be hopeful, joyful, at peace while they're fighting for truth and justice, in the American way, if you will. So that's my concern is that the humor is I appreciate the humor. I appreciate the irony, the
The
darkness.
humor is essential because if they lost the humor, then it
It
would get
is,
toxic
and
very quickly.
it is, and we need to. I want to. I mentioned this earlier. I have a theory as to why the left can't meme and why the conservatives have been so
Well, out with it. Tell us your theory, buddy.
well. Broadly speaking, I think conservatism it simply requires the ability to think beyond primary cause and effect. That's my whole theory. Okay, liberalism is
Pretty simple
person.
there.
Well, it is a person poor, person rich. Take money from person rich, give to person poor. Problem solved. Okay, a conservative is like, well, actually, what you would do is you would decrease the productive capacity of the rich person, therefore creating more poor people. And the poor person actually has bad habits that led to their poverty in the first place, so it wouldn't solve the problem long term. And so if you take, redistribution of wealth on a massive scale, and that's just second, that's just two-dimensional thinking. Third dimensional thinking would be thinking of the knock-on effects of that, over time and generationally. And so conservatism also requires certain virtues like thrift and patience and delayed gratification, building wealth, maturation, conserving traditions. Uh, you know, all of that is involved with conservatism. So conservatism, it all takes it because it takes like a couple of steps to understand the conservative mindset and what it takes for a society to thrive, whereas liberalism is like singular focused. I think that on average, conservatives are like on an IQ test, like on average, I'm not saying there aren't smart liberals, but on average, it's like a whole deviation, or standard deviation,
Well,
right?
the people who make and consume posts, I think, are working at a higher level. I would agree with
For
that.
sure. I mean, there's a lot
Um,
that I don't get, and I think I'm pretty smart, but I'm like, don't get it. It's a reference I don't get. So I'm like, these are they're yeah, they're working at a high level.
well, And what's interesting is that what you start seeing is that the left has the lion's share of midwits. This is a term I love, the
Yeah.
midwit,
It's the
which,
meme of the dumb person and the genius person agreeing on something conceptually, but the midwit has the opposite take.
well, yeah, and like, well, it's what you're saying is that the midwit sees like maybe one or two steps, but doesn't think beyond that.
Yeah.
And so if you're just to repeat a slogan or a narrative enough times, the midwit just kind of accepts it as authoritative and takes a lot of things on faith, right? It's like, oh, well, the New York Times said it, must be true.
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci said it, must be true. And so the midwit normally, and that's the thing with the left, they really know how to speak to the midwit. I mean, to your point, though, I would agree with. I think leftist posting is possible, and I think it happens, but on a much smaller scale. I think if you're looking at the campaign of Mamdani or AOC or Jasmine Crockett, like these kind of young up and comers in the Democrat Party,
Hmm.
I mean they're socialists, okay? I mean, and they do the memes, they work off TikTok and they're very visual. Um, so I mean, I think that's kind of the version you get on the left. I know Newsom is trying to do these. Oh gosh, he's awful. His social media is awful. He just has terrible jokes and just makes fun of JD Vance for being fat or something. Um,
Dude,
and
JD
I mean,
Vance is not fat. He's lost like 40 pounds. What is he talking about? Dude, I
he
wish I looked
well
like JD
because he
Vance.
takes like the whatever there's all these caricatures of Vance through the memes, and it's like Newsom doesn't get it. He's like, oh yeah, they're making fun of Vance. I'm gonna make fun of Vance,
Yeah.
and I'm cool. It's just very well, and I think it's just his social media person doing it. I don't know if Newsom's even that involved, but
No, they made a big deal about these two people they hired and who they
uh,
were. And it's like they're aping what Trump did organically. And I don't think it's working, but who am I to say?
well, so I would say that it takes so that's basically I think the best you're gonna get is like just Mamdani doing like these little videos of himself or parroting these slogans. But, to have a really incisive, insightful sense of humor, it requires thinking at a higher level. And I would agree with you. Maybe it's, self-flattering here, but conservatism, I think, it works on those levels. Whereas I think leftism, progressivism does not work at those levels, but it works quite well at the midwit level.
Yeah.
And so, problem with midwits is that even though there are a lot of them, they don't have a good sense of humor, and
Yeah.
because they have a
Well,
hard
I
time
think
grasping irony and stuff.
right. Well, irony, humor often demands a certain level of intelligence. I mean,
That's
remember,
right.
the IQ of 100 is the average. So, and as George Carlin said, remember half the people are dumber than that. So the question really isn't I think it's ultimately going to become a question of mass appeal versus limited appeal, but limited to the right people. And I think that's kind of where we're at, where what we're seeing is these posters. And again, what I hope people understand, we're talking about POAST, and that's a certain type of social media user and poster.
Well, it's funny. Like, so I wrote an essay on John Carter's thing and just to some situations happening. And well, my wife, who proofreads my stuff, she's kind of the final editor. Like,
Yeah,
I'll revise and proofread myself, but I need her to look at it. And she was just she doesn't know that term poster
yeah,
postocracy, and I kept having to spell it again and again. There's always a red
yeah,
squiggly underneath, and she's
yeah,
like, what, so you just add an A to it? I'm like, yeah, what's the A for? I don't know, a hole. I mean, and so well, then she just started like making little notes on the doc, just like, oh, let's add an A here, let's add an A here. Politics, like,
yeah,
that's not the way it works, okay?
yeah.
I mean, I honestly don't know the etymology of poster posts.
I
Um,
yeah, I know I hear you. I don't either.
but
Well,
that actually goes to a deeper
it's kind of
point.
like adding a P to being owned. You're
Pwned,
pwned.
yeah. Well, I thought it was like a typo, and then people just picked up on it, like, yeah, you got pwned, man.
Okay. Keck, I finally understood, but that one took me a long time.
Well, wait, okay, I
Um,
know the frog says keck or something,
okay,
and
so
this is
like
like an alt-right thing.
there was a gaming if my memory is correct, there's a gaming platform where when you typed in LOL, it translated it to KEK, and I don't remember why it did this in the game. But
Oh.
yeah, so it means LOL, but it's coded it's Pepe coded language, so it's not only is it funny, but it's posting funny. It's funny
Well,
in the
okay,
posting
but
sense of the phrase.
so this is interesting because it does bring up another concern I would have, and I think you're getting at too, is that the problem with the postocracy and these types of voices gaining prominence, is that they aren't quite mainstream. And so a lot of times there's a vocabulary or nomenclature that you have to pick up, like Dudley
Like
Newright.
chimping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
chimping or whatever. But like Dudley Newright, I follow him. I think he's great. We talked about his Reddit article, and he's very good at kind of collecting just kind of content from the New Right and just some very thought provocative essays and podcasts like ours. But I think I kind of made a joke, and he's got a sense of humor. It's like he posted something, and it's like my foid, and like there are so many terms that the New Right has adopted. These posters have adopted, and like Dudley, speak English, man. I don't even know what you're saying anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's easy to get caught in these little, just kind of these very niche kind of communities, conversations. Even the language itself is just kind of not very accessible. Um, but I guess a bigger concern I would have, besides, okay, it would be hard to make some of this stuff kind of mainstream, and appeal to midwits. But I think another issue, and you do see it if you dabble into the New Right and to the postocracy kind of content creators, is that um, they have some strange ideas. I mean, so some of their ideas I think are easy to adopt. I think the HB1 thing, I think it was pretty clear, or even the CRS, I think it's pretty clear. Like some of these things just don't really help anything and they might prevent solutions, but they'll get very animated about Israel, okay?
Yeah.
And, I support Israel, okay? I cannot, in good faith, support Hamas in any shape or form. Now, I mean, if you want to get into the weeds and talk about certain policies and ways, fine. But they'll get caught up in the Jewish conspiracy stuff. And, and I think, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are like the really big voices that'll just kind of really blow it
Yeah.
up. Or Nick Fuentes or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was with you for a while, but I can't do that, man. And this
Yeah.
is to me, and it gets nasty. I mean, that's just one example. There are like a few things like that where it's just like, ooh, the postocracy. I was down. I thought this was kind of like populism in action, and now I'm like, ugh. So I don't know. I see those things being issues.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do you agree?
it's well, no, I totally agree. It's got to be a Christian,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever Christianity is, it's
Some
got to
kind of
be
moral
Christian. No,
framework.
which doesn't mean that we have to support Israel because I'm not a
Dispensationalist, or
dispensationalist and all of that. Um, but I think you hit the nail. I mean, actually, Nick Fuentes is probably like he's big. Like
the
I
Goiper
just
thing. Yeah,
it's like a lot bigger than I want to admit because I mean I have people that come up to me and they're like, "Do you listen to Nick Fuentes?" And I'm like, "No." Does
really.
anybody? Yeah. Like like people that I would not expect. Like a Nigerian kid I know. He's
Mm.
maybe I say kid, he's probably 30. Um, but
You're old,
it's
Evan.
like he's like, "Do you listen to Nick Fuentes?" And I'm like, "No. Why would I listen to him?" Like he's I'm pretty obviously racist and stuff. So I think that there's a even that Homeland Security thing I mentioned,
Hmm.
that's white coded. Okay, that is upper class elitist kind of white coded messaging because it depicts a postcard from kind of America's golden age. Okay,
Hmm.
and when we were probably a 90% white country and things were in it was very in a way that white people would like it. Okay. Um, and so people could look at that and or when they say something like we can return, you know, uh, they could mean they could be saying it could be coded as we could return to a more white America.
Yeah.
Now I mentioned before I just got done reading the Unprotected Class.
Oh yeah, Jeremy
Um,
Carl. Yeah.
yeah, so like a lot of his ideas are undoubtedly popular within the posting world, uh, and I think that he has a lot of important things to say. As I've told my kids, there's nothing wrong with being white. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a culture that people who happen to be white built in America. And there's nothing wrong with defending that, defining first and defending then that culture, a culture that prizes classical music, traditional Christianity, excellence in academics, clean communities. You know, the concept of littering in my family and our families is like unthinkable. I mean, to
Yeah.
us, it is literally unthinkable, but to many parts of the world, it's a way of life. It not only is littering a way of life, dumping all of your trash on the side of the road is just a way of life. And so, like, anyway, so I am confident that there probably are some of those prejudices within the posting community. So I do think that we have to figure out how to like define what we want, which is, for example, a clean community without that necessarily being some kind of a racist thing. What we want to do is convince all people, if it's through punishment, that's fine, but
Hmm.
that we value clean communities. So yeah, but at the end of the day, you can't deny that, either through wit or intelligence, that they are getting the attention of people that can do something about this. And the fact that
Yeah.
JD Vance takes that ugly meme where he's bald or whatever and he posts it
Yeah.
himself.
I never got
He,
into that, but
I don't either, but I mean, like, hey, he's owning it and he's pwning it, you might say. And
well, you know what's funny? Do you remember JD Vance got in on it because they were just making all these kind of stupid memes of him and his face and doing weird stuff with it. And there's like I like the one. It's from the Star Wars prequels with Natalie Portman and the guy who plays Anakin.
yeah,
You know, he's just like kind of staring at her and she's smiling back.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And
The
like I
four,
think
the
the
four,
first
yeah,
panel was like, oh, they're making JD Vance memes. He's getting everywhere. She's like, what are you talking about? Like they both start turning into JD Vance. That one made me laugh. That was probably the best of them.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
okay, but you know, I'm gonna be optimistic here. Okay, so you know how there's an invisible hand in the economy, in a free market economy, where merit wins above all. You know, the invisible hand will make sure that those who produce things of quality and those who can consume, will be kind of brought together and you'll just kind of lead to innovation and improvement. Maybe the postocracy can work the same way. The kind of crackpot ideas that, are espoused by some people that aren't fit for polite company, they'll stay in their dirty little corner, right? But maybe the good ideas that really do have merit will, kind
yeah,
of, what do you call it? Well, just kind of ascend to the halls of power and just become more and more mainstream. And so I like to think that, just individual judgment, we can trust in it so that certain ideas kind of stay where they should be, or I mean, they're just bad ideas, and that the good ideas make it to the top. So
yeah,
maybe that's how you do it. It's just like you got to really maintain just a very free market kind of discussion.
yeah. I could see
Okay.
that. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Evan, for the wonderful conversation, as always. And it's only fair that I thank you, John Carter, if you're listening. We loved your essay, and I think Evan subscribed. I'm a subscriber. We're big fans. Actually, I like some of your other stuff too, so it's nice. And of course, thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe to our Substack, everymancommentary.substack.com, and this podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, and now YouTube. If you've done all that, make sure you share it with your friends, give us 5 stars, and do all the things so we can continue growing. And with all that said, until next time, I encourage you all to touch some grass, thank a poster for his valiant service, read some good books, and go in peace.